Well, let's step back out to our image and do a little bit more exploration on what we can do within Azure Active Directory Connect. So here we are back in our image as I suggested, and we're going to open up the Azure AD Connect. And you're going to see when we come in here, it's saying the synchronization service schedule is suspended until the setup wizard is closed. So the synchronization service that's running behind the scenes will not take place as long as we're in here. So it's just a little heads up about that. Okay, we're good with that. We have the configure option down below, so we're going to go ahead and click that. And notice we have several options we can work with in here. We're not going to go through all of these, but a quick one is to view the current configuration. So we can click on that, and then we go ahead and click Next. And it gives me information about my Azure Directory ID, synchronized directories, synchronization settings. If I scroll down a little bit more, we have items like the user principal name. Here's that source anchor for the consistency GUID that we talked about just previously, and a few other items within here. And we'll take a look at where some of these can be managed or configured. So I'm just going to exit out of this for now. Well, I didn't really want to exit out of that. We'll just pop right back in there. And we'll scroll this baby back up here at the top. And I won't be so quick with the mouse this time. I'll go back to configure. Current synchronization options. We can click on that, and then we'll click Next. And in here, first thing saying, dude, I need to know who you are and that you have global admin permissions to be working with the Azure AD. So I'm going to type in my credentials. And it's going to connect to Microsoft Online. This is where we talked a little bit about filtering. We only have Active Directory, so there's nothing on the drop-down. We only have the one for us, microtechpoint.com, so nothing else we can do here. But we can add another directory if we wanted to manage it from in here. We'll go Next. And in here I can go in and say, sync all domains and OUs. Remember I said we can use filtering, and we could filter at an attribute level, at an OU level, at a domain level, or even up to a forest level. Because I only have one forest, well, we can't do much there. But we can come down here and see that we've got to sync all domains and OUs. Let me go ahead and click on this option here. We only had the one domain, so that's not going to matter. But I can come in here and say, I don't want to sync all of these. I don't want to sync my domain controller, so I deselect that. And I don't want to sync my managed service account, so I deselect that. So we're choosing at the OU level. So any items within these OUs I just deselected, it's not going to perform synchronization on. So this is where we can perform some of that filtering that we were talking about. I'll go ahead and click Next again. And we come in here and we have the password synchronization. This is all we have going on. Now I mentioned the idea of Windows Server 2003 not having some of the features like the password write back. Well, the password write back is pretty critical because what this allows me to do is if I make a change in my password, I want to be able to push that back to Active Directory. Without this feature, I can't do that. So we want to make sure that we're careful about that when we're choosing our forest functional level of 2003. Because even though it's supported, you're going to lose some of the features, and this is one of those features right here. And we have another option here called the Azure AD App and Attribute Filtering, and now it pops up a couple additional options on the left. So we'll go on to the next screen, and inside of here, notice all the Azure AD apps are chosen. So Office 365 Pro Plus, Exchange, SharePoint, Link Online, which is now Skype for Business Online, Azure Rights Management Service, Intune, Dynamic CRM, and third-party applications. All these are being synced. Well, I don't want them all. I go ahead and click this box. I only want third-party applications, Dynamic CRM, Intune, and Azure RMS. So we can customize these apps. On to the next page. Here again, exported attributes. Everything you see here is being synced. I want to limit the attributes being exported to Azure AD. And then you'll see all of these attributes are checked. So I can just scroll down and deselect any of these. And this is how I control the filtering at the attribute level. So just to give an idea where that's done, we can come in here and create filters to customize what's being exported. I'll go ahead and click Next, and it's going to go ahead and check for installed components, and then it's going to perform that configuration. And you'll see it's ready to configure. It's going to configure source anchor attribute. It's going to update the AZMTP on Microsoft.com AAD connector. It's going to update the microtechpoint.com connector. So we have one connector from the online, and we have the one connector from on-prem, and then it's going to configure the synchronization services here. And we have the checkbox to start the synchronization process when the configuration completes, as we saw previously. So I'm going to go ahead and kick off this configuration option, and I paused the video for probably about 90 seconds, and it came back with the configuration complete. So that's what we can do in here as well. I'm going to go ahead and exit and come back in clean, so we have a clean start. And being I clicked exit, that kicks off the synchronization. So once that synchronization ends, we'll be able to come back in and perform some additional tasks. I think it's been enough time, so let's go back into our Azure AD Connect. It'll give you an error saying you can't do anything while synchronization is occurring on the way in. So let's just see if it's going to tell us that. No, we're good. So we'll bring this baby back up to the top. We have our configure option down below, so we're going to go ahead and click on configure. Let's take a look at change user sign-in. We talked about this here, and we'll click next. And again, we have to log in. So there's that baby. We'll be going in. Notice we have the user sign-on option. That's where I want to head to here. So here we have the password synchronization. What does that mean? Well, if you roll over the little question mark, allows your users to sign into the cloud using the same passwords that they use on-prem. If we click on password authentication enables Azure AD to authenticate users using your on-prem identity infrastructure. And then we go from password authentication to federation with ADFS. And I have a completely separate course on that. Be sure to check that out. So I go back to password synchronization. It's telling me the selected user sign-in options already configured, but I could choose to enable single sign-on. Now notice it popped up another option for me over here. So I'll go ahead and click next. And you need to enter a domain administrator account because I'm going to be working with on-prem. So I need to enter the credentials to go on-prem. So microcheckpoint, administrator. Then I'll go ahead and click next. And of course, it's going to check for installed components. And once you click configure, we will do the following. We'll configure source anchor attribute. We'll enable managed authentication in Azure, and we'll enable single sign-on. And like we have seen in the past, when the configuration completes, it'll start a synchronization. So this is how I would come in and configure the different authentication methods depending on what I want to do here. But at this point, I'm not going to configure single sign-on. We're going to talk more about that in the course on Active Directory Federation Services. So in this module, we went through quite a bit when it comes to the preparation and installation of Azure AD. We took a look at the Azure AD Connect requirements. We talked about the steps required to install Azure AD Connect. In fact, we went through the installation. Then we looked at ways to configure the password synchronization. Did that in the demo just now. And we also talked about soft match filtering and what needs to be done with that to avoid the need for two accounts for our users. And next up, we're going to talk about managing Active Directory users and groups with Azure AD.